The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. We do that every week by sharing the stories and advice from those rocking it on the other side. And welcome back to ADjunct, the series where we interview the best advertising educators across the world. Hey, we know universities, it kind of costs a lot of money. Thousands and thousands of dollars. So this is our effort to get the best educators on the air to give their best advice to you at zero cost. And this week we have on Oscar Chilabato, Associate Professor at Johnson and Wales University. So quick note here, you listening might also resonate with this. I always thought up till recently that Johnson and Wales University was historically known for their culinary arts program. Food. That's true. It's still true. But on LinkedIn and through the AAF, that perception shifted for me because this man on air today, Oscar, has changed the perception from it being a culinary school to an ad school, in my opinion. So he began his career in advertising as an advertising account executive for a newspaper, and 22 years later had a resume that included job titles such as advertising manager, corporate director of ad and PR, and vice president of marketing for national and regional retailers, as well as textile manufacturers. So he began his teaching career as a lecturer in marketing for Providence College and joined Johnson and Wales University as a full-time professor in the ad program back in 1999. Good, that's a good year. So ever since, he's been committed to advancing student learning and developing curriculum that mirrors industry needs. His courses range from digital media planning to creative concepts and strategy. So 20 years ago, he started an AAF college chapter and formed a student-run agency called Candlelight Communications. So as a co-faculty advisor, he's helped lead the team to 11 district wins now that I check my notes here, and has advanced to the finals 8 times, and also recently won the 2017 NSAC Championship. So that's the National Student Advertising Competition. So he's been on many boards, and he knows how to win, and really, he's helped shift the perception, once again, of Johnson and Wales from a culinary school to an ad school. So we catch up with Oscar. I want to see how the sausage gets made with their ad program and Candlelight. So let's get on with the show. Hey, before we do, you should connect with him. And he has secret resources listed on our Instagram, so you should go and check out at Breaking and Entering Pod. You can reach him on LinkedIn as well, so look up his name on LinkedIn. And you can always reach out to me. I'll connect you with any of our past guests. But now, on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Oscar Chilabato. You're looking fresh. You're looking tan. I know it's a podcast, but you got a sense of vacation. Is that correct? What were you doing before we hopped on a couple days ago?
Yeah, my wife and I just returned from a great trip to the Amalfi Coast in Italy, and also a 3-day trip that we tagged on at the end in Rome. And it couldn't have been any more delightful and inspiring. Everything you've ever heard about the Amalfi Coast, the natural beauty, the pictures just don't do it justice. Even if you're watching National Geographic, doesn't do it justice. And everything, including the people. Yeah, the food was just amazing. So yeah, we got back about a week ago and kind of settling in. But anyways, yeah, thanks for mentioning that. That was a great trip.
I'm glad you had a great time. Now, where are you back at now? back. Where's home for you now?
We live in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, which is just north of Newport, Rhode Island. I think many people know where Newport is. We live very close to the water here. I was born actually in Newport, Rhode Island. So I've spent my entire life in Rhode Island, this little state of Rhode Island. It's amazing when I travel, sometimes I run into people and they ask me where I'm from. Now, this is in this country, by the way, Gino. And I tell them Rhode Island and they say, oh, New York, Long Island. I said, no, that's Long Island. This is Rhode Island. And yeah, so anyways, yeah, we're really happy here. We love it here. Brought up our children here. We have 6 grandkids now who live fairly close, so we get to see them. And I guess we're tried and true Rhode Islanders.
Yeah, and I see you received an MBA in marketing concentration from Providence. Is that correct?
That's correct. So Providence College, just right up the road here. I also got my undergraduate degree there as well.
Yeah.
It's a great great college, great university.
Yeah.
Many friends I've developed there, and I know some of the faculty there as well.
Yeah. Friars, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I had a friend from high school, still a friend of mine. She played volleyball there.
No kidding.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Spoke very highly of it.
So not to date myself, but when I was there, it was all male. I think the last year I was there was the first year they had co-ed. It became co-ed. Okay. Now my understanding is that it's almost 60% female. You know, it's kind of the pendulum has swung the other way. But
you see that.
Great college.
Gotcha. And then you spent a lot of time teaching at Johnson and Wales University. Where is that in relation to Providence and where you're from?
Yeah, so it's right in Providence. Although Johnson and Wales has a number of campuses. Mm-hmm. They have one in Charlotte, North Carolina. They did have one in Miami that they decided to close, and in Denver. And this was a result. This consolidation was a result of the pandemic, I think, as well, and some of the efficiencies that I think a lot of universities are facing, challenges that they're facing these days. Yes. Yeah, the main campus is still Providence. We have just over 5,000 students enrolled, 500 of which are in the grad program. We have an MBA college, and also, we spoke earlier, we have a famous culinary school.
Right. We were talking about that. My question was before we started recording, was I hallucinating, or did I just dream up that Johnson and Wales is known for their culinary program?
Yeah. No, you weren't dreaming it up, and it is. And we're very proud of the work that they've done there. They're extraordinary culinary school, one of the best in the world, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I've had the great opportunity to meet many of the instructors and chefs over there on the other
good meals.
Oh, absolutely. I don't pass those up.
Yeah. So what do they do for that? Like, are they doing do they have like events, like test kitchen? Do they invite like faculty in sometimes? Can students engage in these events or pay to go to a dinner? Like, what are some of the unique fun differences?
Well, they have a bunch of events, and they have tastings. I recall going to a number of lunches where they have recognized chefs from other parts of the world, and they prepare a lunch or a dinner.
They curate it.
Yes, and I've always volunteered for those.
Heck yeah!
It's amazing. They pair the wines with the different entrees, and it's just a real experience. But students also have the opportunity to use the facilities there are run by the culinary school, all of the cafeterias, and also they have smaller restaurants on campus too that students can go to for certain events. And as you might imagine, the food is just terrific. So that's one of the fringe benefits of teaching the College of Business.
Yeah, and this is where it gets interesting, because I think the narrative, it's interesting from my perspective as a school that might be known for its culinary prowess also houses a powerhouse advertising program which you've led for or you were involved with and still are involved with for over 23 years as as an associate professor of advertising and marketing communications, where I saw that you were the AAF's Distinguished Ad Educator in 2018, where I saw that this culinary school, quote unquote, was bringing home some terrific achievements, especially in the National Student Advertising Competition run by the AAF, the American Advertising Federation, as well, with which you can correct me, but multiple district wins, I think 11, a national title as well in 2017, which is about as good as it gets. I was saying before this, you might be like the Nick Saban of your district, or another sports reference there. But how did you guys from a culinary school develop such a strong advertising team or culture within that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the perception is that we're a culinary school, certainly, and that has a lot to do with the success of that school. But we work in a completely separate college, the College of Business, and the advertising program lives within the marketing degree program in the College of Business,
which is different. This is different than 99%, I would say, of most advertising. This because can you major in advertising there?
Yes, you can. We have an advertising and marketing communications major. That's what it's called.
Okay.
And when I first got there, it was already in place. It was a 2-year program. And within 2 years, it became a 4-year Bachelor of Science program. We had very strong enrollment. And there just was a lot of inherent interest in the program, and we just grew it. I think the National Student Advertising Competition was something that I came upon accidentally. I think, I saw it online. I said, well, this might be an interesting project for our seminar course that we offer our seniors, because that course basically took a client in every semester that we taught the course, and gave students an opportunity to actually, blow out a full-blown integrated advertising campaign. But the idea of competing against other colleges, I think, was very intriguing, Gino, to myself and others and the students. Students love to compete.
Yeah.
And everybody, as you know, every school that competes is given the same exact creative brief, the same challenge, the same deadlines, the same parameters. So it's a true competition. And, the one thing I wanted to do was I wanted to challenge the students in terms of having them do the kind of work that they could put in their portfolio and use in getting a job. Because Johnson and Wales has always been a college that focuses on careers. As a matter of fact, we had a campaign slogan, America's Career University. They don't use that any longer, but the idea behind that has not changed. And it's about giving students real hands-on skills. Naturally, they have to also take the required courses in business and required courses in the liberal arts college. But beyond that, they can do a deep dive into the program, take creative courses, take digital media courses. We actually have specializations in both of those. You can be a creative advertising specialization, or you can take a digital marketing specialization that offers students a real opportunity, again, to develop those skills and knowledge that can take them further out of college once they graduate. But the NSAC, I thought, was the program that we wanted to go into in the course that we were teaching, as I mentioned, the seminar course. And the first year we did it, we didn't do too well in the districts,
Okay.
but it was a learning curve. Then after that, we gained some momentum. We actually got pretty good at it.
Sure. It sounds like it.
Well, we had a nice run, as you mentioned. We won that district's 11 times, and
Who else is in your district?
um, Boston University, Boston College, other bigger schools, Quinnipiac, smallest school in Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
Endicott College. New England is loaded with smaller liberal arts colleges.
Right.
We don't have this great big universities like University of Illinois and others, in the Midwest with, 30,000, 40,000 enrollment. But it was still nonetheless very, very competitive.
Absolutely.
And I think it gave us an opportunity also to position the College of Business. The College of Business used that fame that we had gotten, the recognition we gotten by competing in this and being successful in the competition, to market themselves to other students who are looking perhaps to be ad majors. And
Well,
so we gained that momentum. And
that's interesting too, because how do you advertise an advertising program? And that's something that I'm very interested in as well. What another thing is, do students even know they want to study advertising when they get to a university? A lot of the times it seems like you have to recruit internally for those transfers, those people that are undecided, or they realize they don't like accounting or whatever it might be. Maybe their parents told them accounting or economics is probably a sound foundation for a business career. And then they realize halfway through their second semester of their freshman year that there is an ad major and they can study this, or they are drawn to it. So that's a whole other conversation as well. I know that University of Illinois, I believe, I don't know, 2/3 of the ad majors transferred in. I would imagine. I think I've had that conversation. But yes, I think I can see how the school would invest in you and the program. So you taught this NSAC seminar class through a majority of your career there. Is that correct?
Yes. And I had the opportunity to work with the curriculum committee and add courses because so much has changed, as you know, Gino, in advertising and marketing. And I think, that's one of the other reasons that I think we're somewhat unique in that we have a curriculum committee that can work very quickly.
That's nice. Is it it's a private school? Is that correct?
It's a private school.
I feel like that has its advantages and maybe potential disadvantages, but one of the main advantages of smaller committees that move faster.
Yes.
As being a smaller school, where you get into a Big Ten or any big school, SEC school, where there's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of layers.
Yes.
It takes a long time. I've heard people say it takes like 4 to 5 years to prove a curriculum change, which by then the industry has already changed probably.
Exactly. And I mean, it's not like you can submit something and see it change like in 2 weeks. It has to go.
Yeah.
It's vetted. It has to go through
Still academia. Yeah.
Still academia. But I think if you can provide the type of support for a course and do that at the very beginning, at least in my experience at Johnson and Wales, it usually gets an awful lot of support at all of the different levels, which again makes us more relevant. And again, there are some things that aren't going to change. History courses aren't going to change that much, although I shouldn't say that now, right?
Who knows?
Depending what state you're in, I guess.
Yep.
And yet, advertising and marketing is changing every single day. And so we need to stay on top of that. We know that as professors, and also for students to stay relevant with their skills and knowledge when they get out.
So they get jobs, like you said, you're the career university.
Exactly. So anyways, we think we've done a pretty good job at that. And I'm proud to say that the people I've worked with, the other faculty members have worked with myself and others to make this curriculum super relevant.
Gotcha. So you can major, so it's in the business school, and you can major in advertising and marketing. And then you can choose specializations. You said digital marketing And then I believe you said, was there a creative
Yes.
concentration?
Yeah, there's a creative specialization as
Yeah.
well. So, or you can just get the advertising and marketing communications, take the core curriculum courses within that degree program, and just be a little bit more of a generalist. But we try to encourage students to take a specialization. One of the more popular specializations now is digital marketing.
Which I assume, would that be more media planning slash account track?
Yes, it'd be more on the media side, media planning. We
Mhm.
teach a course in search engine optimization. Students have an opportunity to get certified in Google Analytics,
Do
in
that. Absolutely.
Google search, and you know, again, trying to stay relevant. We're one of the few schools. I think there's maybe, I don't know, handful of schools that Amazon approached when
Oh, yeah.
they launched their
You have a
ad
class.
platform, and which has been phenomenally
I
successful.
heard about this. Don't they like bring like one of their ambassadors in to like judge in like a competition, or they do some sort of review process where they incentivize the class, like they pretty much guarantee somebody gets an internship or a double AE position.
Yeah,
Um,
they have a program where they actually work with faculty. I worked with
mhm.
the Boston office, Scott McKay, just terrific executive, and sat down with them and developed part of the curriculum that I taught
Smart.
with, and we took like 6 week chunk of time and taught the basics of their platform. And then we gave the students an assignment. Students actually presented to the
Yep.
Amazon executives, and then
Yep.
they made a decision about the group that they felt would be most apt to get a position with Amazon, and offered them internships, and which would lead hopefully to AAE positions
Gotcha.
with Amazon. Yeah, so I think that pretty much was the template that they used for just about every university.
But not
Um,
very many. Not very many. So the fact that, I mean, it probably goes back to your NSAC wins and how they saw that you guys were doing well in the competition. So they probably targeted you because of that. And that goes back to that recognition that you've overcome the narrative of being a culinary school, but now you're an ad school as well, and a strong business school marketing platform. So enough so that you got Amazon's attention,
yeah.
and now that your students, I like the fact that my advice for students always is to pick a route. You said generalist, and that scares me. When
Mhm.
If you graduate and you say you're a generalist to a recruiter or to me, and I'm hiring for a specific role such as a copywriter, and
Mhm.
I'm looking at another application where somebody knows they've known that they've wanted to be a copywriter for 3.5, 4 years, and they have a copywriting portfolio, I'm not going to go with the generalist. I appreciate the generalist, but I want that specialization.
Mhm.
That's always been my route, is to know exactly what position you want to know as soon as possible, or have a pretty damn good idea of what you want to do or what you're good at. So
Mhm.
I love that you guys are offering these specializations. It's super, super important.
Mhm. No, I agree with you. Rarely do you ever see a job posted advertising generalist.
Advertising executive. There are those. I do warn people. You will see those on LinkedIn, um, and those are usually sales roles. And there's nothing wrong with Cutco knives or uh,
Mhm.
Northwestern Mutual selling insurance to all your friends and family. Nothing wrong with that. But me personally, I never wanted to get into that. And I hope, everybody aspires to work at an Amazon or a
Mhm.
BBDO or a big agency, whether it's
Mhm.
brand side or agency side. I think those should be the routes that you're looking for personally. Another route too, Oscar, and what also I would tell people, there's the brand route, working for a Nike or an Amazon, or there's the agency route, or what something also is interesting is picking your favorite company in general.
Mhm.
Let's say you're obsessed with hiking.
Mhm.
There might be a national hiking service government agency,
Mhm.
and you're
Mhm.
really passionate about uh,
Mhm.
for hiking. And you can go and call them up and be like, I'm good with search engine optimization.
Mhm.
I took Oster's class. I know how to make basic campaigns. Would you want somebody to do that? And most of the time they do have a website.
Mhm.
Most of the time they do need marketing for some funds,
Mhm.
whether that's charitable funds or something like that. You can identify what you're passionate about and make a role as
Mhm.
well. It's something I've also been telling student listeners. Do you agree? Am I missing anything? And then you can also teach advertising, which is something I'm.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, and particularly now, with the internet and the ability of companies, let's face it, the very large companies will have their own demand side platforms and
Mhm.
can put out their own ads. And I have quite a few students who have gone from the agency to the client side, and
Absolutely.
it's the agency training is phenomenal. I think it's very useful. I encourage students, if they really want to learn a lot more, go further in advertising, not necessarily get your MBA right away. You can do that later. In agency, particularly a larger agency, where you get exposure to very talented people in all different disciplines, is going to be an education in itself. And it's also going to point you in a direction that you did not perhaps see while you were an undergrad. As much as we try to replicate the advertising agency experience in our ad lab, it really isn't as intense. It's not as hands-on. It's not as advanced. So, but once these students do get exposure to something that they see themselves really good at, and as you mentioned, Gino, they see an industry or a category,
Yep.
something they're passionate about. What could be better than that? Than to marry those two, conflate those two, your skills and ability and knowledge that you learned with your passion for an industry or an organization, and go to work for them. And again, there's so many more opportunities to do that now with the internet and with digital media, opportunities that did not exist before.
Absolutely. I think the benefit as well going agency experience is just going to teach you how to be in the fire.
Mm,
Really. You're going to get tempered and you're going to get tough, and it's a lot of work. It's fast, and you're just going to adapt to it. Whether you like it or not, it's going to make you so much better and so much stronger as a marketer and just as a worker.
mhm,
To be on and to work hard and to be professional quickly and be detail oriented. There's no other training like it. In
mhm,
that first year, it's so critical. Um, Ideally, you want to be at a super creative agency, but a lot of the times you don't really get to pick your first job, especially in the economy today.
mhm,
So you don't have to get stressed out about that perfect role right away. You'll figure it out. And that's why it's so important to get those foundations and those portfolio pieces and the NSAC competition like in your portfolio, because you might end up in a role that doesn't give you the strongest portfolio pieces, but you might need to rely on that college work for a little bit. You might be working on coupon ads. You
mhm,
might be working on banner ads that are not terrific. Even at some of the best large agencies, they're going
mhm,
to be giving out the good, strong creative briefs to their top teams.
mhm.
So it's super important as people are listening today, as they are in university or at portfolio school, which is another thing as well, is to really think about those campaigns. They might have to stick around for a couple of years.
Right. No, you're right. It's amazing sometimes. I have students who are very talented, and yet I think they sometimes are a little unrealistic uh, going into an agency about what they're going to be given as jobs. It's not like you're going to go to work. You go to work for BBD&O. You're not going to work on the Pepsi. You're not going to write a Super Bowl commercial. But whatever you do, I always mention to them is, again, pay attention and be a good learner. Continue to learn from others. I kind of harken back to my experiences working for a client.
Yeah,
Uh,
let's talk about that because I want to know, like, Were you in academia your whole career? Are you a professor? Do you have that PhD research focused? Are you are you a professor of practice? Give me some insight into your teaching style and how you got there.
Yeah, so I have an MBA. I don't have a PhD, but I started actually in advertising, working for a newspaper. Remember them?
Mhm.
Um, and selling advertising. I was an account executive. I had multiple accounts, and even there, I worked with these two individuals. They were both art directors, who just great creatives. One of them had worked for an ad agency, and we had all of these small accounts. A lot of these accounts were retailers, they couldn't afford an agency. So we did their advertising for them. It was mostly, obviously, it was print ads, but I liked that. I liked just getting involved with the art directors. And again, I learned so much from them. I moved on from that position to the client side, and I worked as the advertising manager for a regional chain of about 150 stores. And we were also a manufacturer. So I got involved with branding. So we had some advertising that was devoted just to the branding of our products. But
Nice.
we also spent around, I don't know, 40, 50% of our budget on retail advertising, building traffic to our stores. I then was promoted and looked over another division, managed that budget that made us just about a national account. And the point I'm making here about learning is that we had an advertising agency from Providence, Rhode Island, called Leonard Monahan, Lubas and Kelly. And one of those names might be familiar to you, David Lubas,
David Lubars, yeah.
who is head creative officer at BBD&O.
Yeah.
Uh, Great guy, great
I'm trying to get
creative.
him on the damn podcast. I think we're connected right now. He's been mentioned multiple times on the show.
Yeah, he just great creative and a greater person, just a wonderful human being. But the other creative director was Tom Monahan, who was equally talented. And so I had the opportunity to work with these two individuals. They both worked on our business. And what impressed me about them wasn't just their creative ability, and they both were super creative, super funny guys. It was their ability to look at strategy and not to do advertising, creative advertising, just for creative advertising's sake. There was always an insight there, and they had this intuition about our customer. They just understood account planning early on, and these were creatives. And this is back in late 80s, early 90s, when account planning started to become a thing,
Sure.
and positioning strategy and all of that became sort of a thing. They were well ahead of their time. So I learned from them. I learned an awful lot from them. And I still take some of those lessons and bring them into the classroom. So working for the client, enabled me to work with very good advertising folks, working for advertising agencies, and also very strong media planners, people who really understood how to purchase media, understood how to use analytics. This is well before uh, digital analytics became available to all of us.
Did
Right?
you ever want to go to the creative agency side, or because you were excelling, it seems like pretty fast on the brand side? And can you talk about what brand you were working on?
Yeah, it was a retail chain called Anderson Little, and the other chain was Richmond Brothers. And you probably heard of Foot Locker
Yeah.
stores. So we were all owned by the same company, Woolworth Corporation. And so the difference for us at Anderson Little and Richmond Brothers is that we were manufacturers of products that we sold in our stores. So we were vertically integrated.
Yeah.
And all of our factories were here in the United States.
Nice.
Not one of those factories are open now,
Gotcha.
to my knowledge. And that was, that's a whole nother case study.
Right.
But it was interesting because at the same time we were trying to build traffic, because that's the retail proposition, build traffic into the stores.
Right.
We also had a budget that positioned our brand
Right.
as a real value, tailored clothing for men and women. We made women's clothing as well. Um, and, sometimes those two things, particularly when there's tough economic times, and also I might add, um, during that time, men stopped wearing suits. I mean, this is probably before you were even born, Gino, but the dress code back then, in the 80s and 90s, pretty much guys wore suits to work. They wore a suit and tie, white shirt, blue shirt. That was the uniform. That changed.
Right.
That changed dramatically. And we were not, the company was not flexible enough to turn the factories that we had, which were making suits, into manufacturing other type of clothing that a customer was wearing. That
Sure.
was an opportunity that we missed.
They couldn't pivot. Yeah.
They couldn't pivot fast enough. It was just too difficult. But anyway,
So you were managing advertising pretty much and marketing for a pretty large region of this. So you were overseeing the fun branding and positioning, and then also the effective retail advertising, getting people to the stores, and
exactly.
the marketing of the chain of the stores themselves.
Mhm.
And you were able to work with that amazing agency with David Lubars, and what was Monahan's first name?
Tom Monahan.
I've heard that name too. Where's he at now?
Tom's retired, and he lives in Providence. I stay in touch. As a matter of fact, Tom Monahan actually came and worked at Johnson and Wales, teaching advertising courses with me for
Look at
3 or
that.
4 years. Yeah, and
Did you help him get hired there on the
Oh, yeah.
search committee? See
Yeah,
how
I
this works, everybody? Like, these connections. It's a small world, and
Mhm.
even if you're on the agency side, don't be an asshole, right? Right? Because you want those nice connections, and people see each other everywhere, and
Yes.
super, super important. So those guys taught you a lot about strategy, and I'm sure you taught them a lot about your business and how you had to clarify what would work and what didn't work, and they push you and you push them, I'm sure, as well, and you developed a great relationship with them.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't always rosy.
No,
Many
yeah.
times, they would show creative that just was not appropriate, and that can happen. They were a creative house, and they pushed the creative, but
That's what you want.
you want them to you don't want an agency, this, to do what you're asking them to do. What do you need an agency for?
Right. And it's better to reel them back, because that's what you're paying them for, is to come up with super creative ideas.
Mhm.
If they're coming up short with not creative ideas, you got to get a new agency, right? They
Right.
should be pushing the bar, and your job is to make what's realistic, what can the budget look like, and then yes, you're gonna take some risks and
Mhm.
you're gonna take some chances. A good agency will convince you to do that.
Yeah, and speaking of that, taking risks, I just want to make a point. It just came to mind. Giving advice to students. I tell students to push their ideas a little bit more, because you're students. You don't have a client.
Oh, I love this, Oscar. Yes, bring it. Tell them.
Yeah, so it's like, I'm your client and you're a student. And I'm never going to give you a failing grade for really trying and pushing the envelope. Do it now while you're a student, because you're going to be working for a client someday, and you may not have that opportunity. That's the reality of the world.
It goes back to the fact that whatever you're working on, your website, your campaigns have to last you a long time, a couple of years after you graduate. It might be the separator of what gets you your second job that you really love. And now is your chance to push the limits. You won't have a client. You don't have a client. You won't have an internal manager, creative director, ACD, that is going to say that's too much. And you should flex it, and you should push the boundaries. Pick brands that you'll never get to work on, that you think are fun or interesting. I prefer brands, actually, Oscar, that are not the Nikes and the Apples, because it's hard to compete against their advertising. For student portfolios, I always love the challenger brands. Brands that are second, or they're well known, they're just not doing as well, Burger King, 7-Eleven coffee. I don't know. Generic brands could be interesting too, as I'm looking at my Amazon branded candle here. So
Right.
I always say, you don't want to go up against White and Kennedy. You don't want to
Right.
go up against TBWA Media Arts Lab, because now that's the standard and you have to beat that, and you probably can, but it's just a lot harder. You're already putting yourself at a disadvantage by setting the bar so high.
I agree. I know that in the portfolio class we offer the creatives, we give them a generic brand like a toothbrush, just a generic toothbrush, or
Sure.
a hairbrush, or something that is, just has a very basic.
It's a commodity. Yeah.
A commodity type of item and brand it and find the differentiating benefit, and then push that out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. The students actually, I think, do better work when you give them those types of assignments, because obviously, when they see a Nike brand, or they're influenced by the advertising that came before them.
Right.
And all it is a poor regurgitation of,
right.
of what, of what has already been put out there. So yeah, I think those are the types of assignments that, again, some of it would be very fresh. And I would have to believe that a lot of the creative directors would respond to that.
Mm-hmm. And they do. That's, we talk about it. It's hard to go up against those big brands. So, other advice, Oscar. So actually, I want to ask you then, what happened? So when did you make the shift into academia? You had your MBA earlier. When did you get that? And then when did you finally make the switch outside of that group?
I started in the grad program pretty much when I got out of undergrad, and then had to leave because I was traveling a lot in my job, had a young family, and I was able to go back and finish up my MBA. I was in my 30s, late 30s when I finished.
You started it right out of school, right out of undergrad?
Yeah. And then,
life happened.
Got married, had a family, and had a job that had me traveling all over the place. And I was fortunate enough to go back and finish up my MBA.
You went back in your 30s, you said?
Yeah. Yep.
That's why I'm doing the master's right now, because if I would have known, it is really nice to have some years of experience now with the master's program. But now it seems like I have to do it now. I had a realization that life gets busier.
Yes.
You get promoted, or you get a wife, and you have kids, or whatever it may be. I know that's coming down soon. Well, maybe not for me, but who knows? But life gets busier, and I want to finish. I want to get my master's done as well as before it gets too crazy. But you can always go back. So you went back later on. Did you go back knowing you want to get in academia, or was that to progress in your brand side role?
Well, I just thought that since I had started it, I wanted to finish it. Number one, and number two, I always felt as if education, the more education you have, as long as you can use it, as long as you have some idea of the direction you're going, I thought it would increase my opportunities. And what it did was enable me to get the position at Johnson and Wales that opened up, full-time teaching position, back in 1998. And I've never looked back. So as they say, it was quite, a change, jumping from the corporate world to the classroom. And
how old were your kids at that time when you made the shift?
Yeah, so that would have been, I had 2 in high school and 1 like in middle school.
So probably pretty good change of pace then, right?
Yeah. And the lifestyle change.
Everything changed. Yeah.
Was great. Having summers off. I immediately was asked to take students on a summer study abroad program, which was an amazing program.
Another great benefit of these private schools. I feel like as I have these conversations, lecturers, professors get to go on these nice summer abroad trips and teach classes there.
Yeah. So we developed a a relationship with a school in Stockholm, Sweden, the Berg School of Communication. It's probably considered the best portfolio school in Scandinavia, one of the best in Europe.
Hmm.
And
You'll have to
it's,
connect me with somebody over there.
yeah, they're a great institution, and quite a few creatives, particularly, have come out of there and worked for U.S. agencies. I forget some of the names, but anyways,
So you had that. Did you create that, or was that already like in the pipeline? And then
no, I pretty much am responsible for that.
nice. You
And
were Oscar. You were like, I like this idea of going to Sweden. I might make some connections over there and teach a class over there.
it's it's a great country. They're great
Mhm.
people. It's kind of funny because they all speak English over there, but when they run their advertising in English, it's not like grammatically correct. It's
It's a
just
little
kind of
off.
weird. Yeah, it's a little off.
It's okay.
But it's okay.
As long as it works for their people and it's effective there, they know their culture better than we do.
And they're very good advertisers. I'm trying to think of the agency. Also, we developed a relationship with Forstmans and Bodenfors.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I've
don't
heard
know
of
if
them.
you've heard of them. They're a great agency. And I brought students, advertising students over there. We did project for IKEA. We went to their headquarters. We did
Nice.
we did a project for H&M. We went to the headquarters in Stockholm. We did work for Volvo and their ocean race that they do. It was amazing because they start the ocean race in Newport and they ended in Gothenburg, Sweden. And we actually met with their team and presented to them in Gothenburg, Sweden, and in Newport, Rhode Island. Of course, it's right
Cool.
down the road. So, I mean, these are experiences that students have. And one of my recommendations for students is when you have that kind of an opportunity at your college or university to do international work, to work for an international client, that's a bonus. You're in the bonus round. Do
Right.
it. If you can, take advantage of every opportunity to do that sort of thing, as well as to compete in the National Student Advertising Competition or to compete in the collegiate EFFIES, which we did.
Mhm.
And we also competed in the digital marketing competition that's offered to colleges now, that's run by the professor from Purdue University. Um,
Haven't heard of that.
yeah, it's a great little competition. It's not as I don't think it's not as big, it's not as rigorous, or all encompassing. It just focuses on digital
Yeah.
uh,
Which is
marketing.
if you that's your specialty, that's your specialty.
Sure,
And now there's the Crowbar Awards, which is breaking and enterings,
I saw
which
that. I,
pretty damn cool to get to, you get to come on the podcast with the guest judge it's every quarter. So there's no excuse where you need 4 to 5 campaigns, creative campaigns to break into advertising as a copywriter or art director. We know that. So we were like, let's create a quarterly competition. So for a year, if you do
Mhm.
it for 2 years, you might end up with 5 really good campaigns and you might end up meeting that guest judge. We had Greg Hahn. Doesn't
Yeah,
really get better than Greg Hahn right now.
I was going to
We
say.
have Kellen Blunt and Eric Coleman, Preacher, and then Eric Coleman's one of the best copywriters of all time. We'll get David Lubars on it too, probably to judge it. So you get a blue crowbar to break into advertising. So that's my little, and it only takes 3 months to really, you and 2 friends to really knock out a good creative uh, portion of that campaign. So that's
That's
something that
awesome.
we, yeah. So if your students want to, had to plug that, of course, it's an advertising podcast, but um, we were tossing out some great competitions. I thought it would be a good moment.
Oh yes,
Why not?
yeah,
So
uh,
international, we talked about you. So you took that role. We talked about some great advice. Oscar, is there anything else that you wanted to let our audience know before
yeah,
we sign off here?
yeah. I mean, yeah. So I think I think we touched on a lot of key points and
Yeah.
advice to give students. Um, and I mentioned before about taking advantage of the fact that you are a student to push the envelope,
Hmm.
and 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 yet at the same time, don't be afraid of doing just good work in the beginning, work that's solid and strategic. And when students um, put together their portfolio, I and again, this might be a little regimented, but I always encourage them to cite the challenge, the insight, and then the execution.
Oh yeah,
Make it,
fundamentals.
yeah, super, super simple.
You do that, yeah. You'll do that in agency life. Every deck, you'll create concept slides where it's pretty much challenge, insight, or idea, challenge, insight, idea.
Sure.
Same thing.
Yep.
And then you'll have to come up with 20 to 30 of them by the end of the week. But you're right, those fundamentals are there, and you start off, every slide has those three components with a little comp of an image, and then you talk it through and you learn how to speak it, and you present that to your creative director. That goes to the ACD, then the creative director, and then if you're lucky, it passes that those internal rounds, they'll go to the chief creative officer, and if it passes there, it goes to the client. So all these fundamentals that you're teaching are exactly what the agency world does.
Yeah. And just one other, just two other last things I want to.
Yeah. Feel free. Take it home.
Well, it's like sometimes a client's problem cannot be solved with advertising, even though they're asking for advertising. I know that in the real world, having lived that life. And also, even looking at the briefs that we get from NSAC, I ask the students to scratch beneath the surface, beneath the ask a little bit, and really put together what's the real question? What's the real problem that needs to be solved? Sometimes it's a business problem. It has nothing to do with advertising. And I think if you can think that way, think critically as a student that way, and even show in your portfolio that, hey, listen, we were given this assignment, but the real solution to this problem did not involve advertising, but we had a solution. And I asked students to actually do that in the portfolio class as an assignment. So they know the difference between a business problem and a marketing problem. So that's
right. And you can argue our first brief was Dasani water. And we knew, frankly, no amount of, advertising can fix a bad product. But we wanted to see how they would tackle that. And some people address that as well. And they came up with some interesting marketing solutions, and they took some interesting other directions as well. So that's great. And what was your last one, Oscar?
My last one is, this is a little self-serving. We do a lot of advising in colleges. Someday you will too, I'm sure, Gina, as you land a job teaching. And students unsure about which courses they should take. And I tell them, don't just look at the title of the courses, look at the professors who are teaching it. Always go with the course, even if you're not even sure what that course is about. Go with a course, sign up for a course where there's a really good professor who loves to teach. And whatever that course is, you're going to learn something, you're going to be engaged.
Do you see the exact same translation here? Do you see how this can be applied to agencies? It's the same thing. People look for the big names, but they're not, and the big clients. You should really be looking for who's your boss, and who are the direct managers from that client side, who you're going to be working with. That's so much more important than these big names.
Exactly.
Because the people in these big agencies that we hear about, they're changing every year. So that same advice exactly applies to the job search. So I love that you brought that up as well.
Yeah. Well, there are some parallels for sure.
Yes.
But that's all I have. And I do want to thank you for having me on.
Yeah. How can people reach out to you?
My email address is ochilabato@jwu.edu.
Great.
I'm always checking that. I don't know, we can post that or whatever. I'd be happy to answer any questions, help any student who has any questions, and even other professors who may want to.
They'll be tuning in. I'm sure they'll be tuning in. So they'll want to connect and learn about how you got 11 district wins and 1 national win. And how many top 4 in nationals did you have?
We were in the top 4 5 or 6 times.
I'll say 6 times. That sounds pretty good to me.
I think it is 6 times. We were,
There you go.
We had a good run. And I've been blessed with some extraordinary students.
You alone have changed the perception when I first read about you of Johnson and Wales from being a culinary school to an ad school. So you have foundationally changed my single perception, and hopefully everybody listening. So thank you very much for coming on, Oscar.
Well, thank you, Gino, for having me, and thank you for your service to the students that you're doing. Appreciate it.
Of course.